Okay, everybody, we have reached the bottom of the hour, so let's get started with today's L10 webinar. Beware of these 5 things that sabotage team productivity, sponsored by EMC Leaders. Okay, let me tell you about our speaker today, and then we'll turn things over to her. Dr. Lola Gershfield is the founder of EMC Leaders and an organizational psychologist and board and team dynamics specialist. Lola is a developer of the groundbreaking and empirically supported approach, the emotional connection process, or EMC. She's the author of 5 books, including Emotional Connection and the Connected Culture. Everyone attending today's live webinar is going to receive a free digital copy of her newest book, The Connected Culture, and 5 of you will also be drawn in a drawing after the program to receive a print copy of her book, Emotional Connection, the EMC strategy. So let me go ahead and turn things over to Lola to take it away from here. Lola, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you everybody for being here. It's always a pleasure to share this time with you. I'm always honored that you would take 30 minutes of your time to listen to this important message about team productivity and things that actually sabotage team productivity. Workplace conflict has been an interesting phenomenon for me. I worked with my husband for 27 years building electronic manufacturing company and worked as an HR manager, as CFO for many, many years, and then a board member. And I saw a lot of conflict happening in the workplace. And actually, this study by CPP Global showed that 85% of employees are dealing with conflict. It kind of like relieved me. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, at least there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. But definitely people don't know how to actually effectively deal with workplace conflict, but more importantly, what causes conflicts in the first place. And I was really fascinated seeing highly intelligent people who could solve technical, difficult problems, but could not talk to each other. So I decided to do my research on it and find the answer. And when I did, I was like on fire. I wrote a book, the emotional connection process. I created certification programs. I wrote a lot of articles you could find on Forbes and all kinds of different magazines. I taught it in different university at Pepperdine, Fullerton, Chapman, Long Beach. And I actually went on a conference last 2 weeks ago, and I presented in front of lots of people about emotional connection. We had such fun crowd, and I was really fascinated with all the people I met who are so passionate about talent and development. And if you are attending the L10 conference, please be sure to stop by. We will be there as well. So I was really fascinated with workplace conflict, and what I learned from theory of attachment and neuroscience is that emotional connection is an ancient wired-in survival code that is designed to keep the people that we depend on close to us. And so when we get disconnected, our mammalian brain codes that disconnection in terms of life and death. It's probably even hard to imagine that's what's happening, but that's why you probably in your offices, in your relationships, the work team relationships, you see how people get so angry, so stressed, so sad, so afraid so quickly, because their mammalian brain knows that this drama, this in fact about whether you're on your own or whether someone will come to you when you call. So what we do in the whole process of emotional connection is we help teams to create the secure bond, secure relationship, so they can feel that they matter to each other in a way that their mammalian brain does not go into that panic. So they become more accessible, responsive, and engaged. All emotional variables. So accessible, responsive, and engaged. The key question in attachment relationship is, are you there for me? And this actually applies to all relationships, but we're talking about team relationships today. So are you there for me? And ARE stands for A, are you accessible to me? Can I reach you if I need you? R, are you responsive to me? Can you be emotionally responsive to me when I call? And E, are you emotionally engaged with me? Will you stay in the conversation with me even though you're feeling stressed? So if you have a lot of experiences where the answer to that question, are you there for me, is a no or a maybe, your mammalian brain will go into panic. And you're either going to be either anxious or avoidant. So these are two most common behaviors that we go into when we become disconnected. We become more anxious or avoidant. And so what we find through research is that these strategies, avoidant or anxious, are kind of responses to this disconnection, is what makes us less productive. So what we're starting to understand is how important these emotional bonds are in team relationships. And this applies not only just in the area of workplace conflict, but it also applies to employee engagement, turn of intentions, and of course, company culture. So let me share with you the 5 things that sabotage team productivity and make people more anxious and avoidant. So the first thing is obviously thinking that bad team relationships cannot be changed. And so you kind of stuck with it. So what we have seen in our work and from years of research is that we have the longing for connection. And even if you had negative relationship, or if you are in a distressed relationship right now, where you're not working well together, you can learn to understand this phenomena called emotional connection. So for example, after the EMC training, Mary, for example, can say, oh, we are caught in that thing again. We are caught in the negative cycle where I can't seem to connect with you and I get upset and I start to feel like I'm not important. So I start poking you and I'm poking you to get you to respond to me. But this is one of those things where you feel like I'm just trying to hurt you. And Tom says, yes, that's right. I just want to run. But I know that when I run, that totally freaks you out and you poke me even more. So maybe we can just get some coffee or something and let's talk about it in our next session. So people start to learn how to see patterns and the way they move with each other, how they trigger each other, how they can step on each other's toes, get each other's out of balance, and push each other off balance. So you can learn to help each other in moments of stress and disconnection when your brain says, oh my gosh, I'm all alone, this person doesn't care about me. You can learn how to regain your balance so you can create that secure base in your relationship and repair the disconnect. So when people can create this, and they have all kinds of different names. They come up with names such as, oh, we are caught in the spiral, or we are caught in the nothing, or oh, we are caught in the tornado. So when they start to recognize the emotional disconnection as it happens, they can see how important it is for each other to help each other out of it. The second thing that sabotages team productivity is ineffective strategies. A developmental psychologist, Ed Tronick, did a great experiment with his team at Harvard called still phase. And so in still phase, they asked the mother to play with her baby. And they asked the mother, and after a few seconds, they asked the mother to stop responding to the baby. So she stopped interacting and sending any cues to the baby. She basically goes still and silent. And then you watch the baby goes through all the things that bonding science says the baby will do in the exact same sequence. So first, the baby reaches. Then the baby screeches, like pushing for connection. Hey, where are you? What's going on? Then the baby shuts down and turns away. And then the baby gets overwhelmed and starts to cry. When the mother re-engages with the baby comes back immediately, like nothing happened. Well, what attachment science says is that adults go through that same sequence when we get disconnected. So whether you are 1-year-old or 30-year-old or 50-year-old, your brain is wired for bonding and it will immediately sense that rejection or abandonment in the moment. So when we can't get people to respond to us, or we feel unimportant, or we feel rejected, our mammalian brain goes into panic. So how we deal with that panic actually is the key defining element in the way how we grow, engage, and work together. There's actually an interesting research that was done after 9/11 and looked at companies that provided support groups where people could reach for each other and be vulnerable and ask for support and take in their support when needed. And those people recovered faster and became more productive and engaged and were able to grow and were really doing pretty well 9 months later. The people who did not participate in those support groups, who could not trust others for that emotional support, were doing pretty badly. So reaching is the most effective strategy. And you can learn how to put your emotions together, how you can share your vulnerability in a way that pulls the team closer. And you can learn how to tune and respond to each other that creates that secure bond. So as a result, of course, you become more resilient, and then with the best resource for that resiliency is human connection. And it becomes much easier for us to deal with the dragon when we know that people who we depend on are really standing next to us. It's much easier. The third thing that sabotages team productivity is this notion that you have to be self-sufficient, relying on yourself. You are bonding mammal. You are a social interpersonal being. You are designed to grow with each other. Of course, we can teach individuals, but the best place for people to grow is to be in good relationships with people they work with. That's why our training programs are really focused on teams, because we see the transformation happens when people repair their relationships. I was doing a training with a group of scientists, and one person said, when something dreadful happens at work, I can go and share it with my partner at home, with my wife, but it can never compare to the feeling I get of that sense of relief and comfort and support when I shared with my teammates. So it makes a huge difference, because really the most natural place for us to grow is to have that secure bond with each other. Another example is Anne, a CEO of a manufacturing company, who says, Lola, I can really see a change in my relationship with my team and the way we work together. Before, I used to be frustrated all the time, stressed, and the team was disengaged. I felt like I was doing the work all by myself. But now we are different. We can have our differences. We can fight. But I know that I can turn to my team and we can create this amazing sense of connection. I know if I need them, they will be there for me. So what Anne is talking about is this ARE relationship, where that main question in secure bonding, are you there for me, is answered with a resounding yes. So that when Anne is sitting in a meeting with her team, their emotional presence is a powerful safety cue for her brain, powerful enough to turn off stress and fear. And this works over Zoom as well, with virtual teams. There, when you are connected with your team, even virtually, you can feel that emotional presence. So what we're really starting to understand is that when we create that sense of connection, the brain actually creates new neural pathways to deal with stress and uncertainty differently. So you actually become less anxious and avoidant. So if you're avoidant, you are able to stay in the conversation, you become less overwhelmed. If you're anxious, you become less anxious, so everything doesn't have to be so urgent all the time. You can take a breath and say, okay, I'm going to give this person a little time because I know they care about me. So you start to respond completely differently. And that's how your productivity starts to evolve. The fourth thing that sabotages team productivity is the lack of understanding of attachment needs. So you are homo vinculum, the one who bonds. You are social bonding mammal, and your whole nervous system is wired for that. It's not a choice, it's bred into our bones. So understanding yourself as a bonding mammal will help you to make sense of your emotions. It will help you to make sense of how terrified we all are of rejection and abandonment. And there's lots of research that actually is feeding into this now. Naomi Eisenberger, for example, at UCLA, talks about the fact that her research in brain scan studies shows that a response to rejection from people we depend on is processed in the same place and the exact same way as physical pain. So you're a bonding mammal, and seeing rejection on your teammate's face or your boss's face and stepping on a nail, your brain registers it as the same. They are both danger cues. Understanding who we are helps us really understand the relationships we have and the way it impacts our creativity, our engagement, and of course, our productivity. The fifth thing that sabotages team productivity is called demon dialogues. And they are demon because they create other demon dialogues that take over relationships. And once they're there, they sort of self-generate. The most common demon dialogues are attack, attack, and demand, withdraw. So if you listen to an attack, attack dialogue, both people are going after the booby prize, which is we are both incredibly miserable, but it's not my fault, it's your fault. So then they have an argument whose fault it is. And the biggest problem I see is then when other people get involved, like a manager or supervisor or HR, and they start taking sides. So as you can see why demon dialogues are self-generating, because when you are in content, when you miss the emotional music that is playing behind the words, you are creating a demon dialogue. And so another common demon dialogue is demand withdraw, where one person is pushing for attention and connection, and the other one is withdrawing. And so the problem is the message gets actually distorted. The person who is withdrawing, they have no idea that they're actually increasing the anxiety for the other person. They are shutting people out when they withdraw. The person who is pursuing and pushing and demanding, they are becoming so aggressive that they're actually scaring the other person. So Terry, for example, as they learn the process, Terry says, I poke him and poke him and poke him, anything to get a response from him, because if there's no response, there's no relationship. Listen to her words. If there's no response, there is no relationship. And once in every 10 times, it works. So I keep doing it. And Dave says, she is so dangerous. I've got my guard up all the time and I shut down. And yes, I guess I do shut her out. And the more she pokes, the more I run. And the more I run, the more she pokes. So if you listen to the emotions underneath this and help to make sense of it, it's all about disconnection and trying to get back to connection. That process is wired into our blood. So the more secure your relationship, the more productive the team will be. And there's lots of research that shows that when that relationship within, like, for example, manager and the direct report is not secure, team members and even the manager become more anxious and avoidant, and the more workplace conflicts you will have. And recently, we run a very nice study with 169 participants. And in our study, we looked at that correlation between avoidant, anxious, with workplace conflict, employee engagement, and turnover intentions. And what we found was there's a direct correlation. The more anxious avoidant, the more workplace conflict. The more anxious avoidant, the more turnover intentions. The more turnover intentions, the less engaged people are. And the more turnover intentions, the more there's conflict. I mean, the other way, the more workplace conflict, the more turnover intentions you will have. So the whole point is really to demonstrate that if you don't want people, if you want to keep your people, if you don't want to have the too high of a turnover, if you want to create a productivity on your team, you got to look at team relationships, because a stronger bond will help people to be less anxious and less avoidant. So the less workplace conflict you will have, the more engaged people will be. The more engaged people will be, the less turnover you will have. So everything we do in the EMC process is creating the secure team relationships. And to learn more about the trainings, we have online training, group trainings, company-wide trainings. You can schedule productivity recovery assessment with us. And remember, emotional connection is really the most effective way of taking care of the teams that you care about. Oh yes, here's the QR code for the book. Please join us at the L10 conference. So one of the is, what if people don't want to learn about emotions or emotional connection? And basically the answer is, as I explained, is we have that longing. The longing for connection is there. People say that because they are afraid. They're afraid to feel weak, or they're afraid maybe to be incompetent about how to share emotions. They don't want to feel they don't know what's happening for them inside. So what we have done, we have created tools with emotions, with attachment needs, with the behaviors, automatic behaviors that they do, so they can have something to hold on to in moments of stress and feel competent and confident what's happening for them. And we create safety, because one of the things that most important is for people to feel safe that they're not the bad guy, they're not at fault that it's happening, but to understand that we are all co-creating this negative cycle. We're all responsible, we're all impacting each other. When people recognize that they're not the bad guy, they're not at fault, they start to take risks. And people take risks all the time because they have that longing for connection. So I hope this was valuable to you. Thank you so much for being here, and we hope to see you at the L10 conference. Thank you.